Hi, as promised, I'm going to keep going to record how you approach the last two things in SPSS Chapter 3. So again, we're in SPSS Chapter 3, and this lets off exactly where we stopped during class in the morning on October 1st, working through SPSS Chapter 3. So I have everything up the same way that I did for class, so let's get started. So here, the next section is centering or standardizing a numeric variable. So we're actually going to go into a new data set. So we're going to open the world data set. So we're going to go over, I already have the data saved. So I'm going to go over to File, New, Open Data, and I have world here. If you do not have your data already available, here's where you would go over to Blackboard and you would, oops, sorry. Had something else opened, and you would go under required materials, books, and data sets to download the world data set. So again, you might have to do that. And then when you have it downloaded, you'd go over to File, Open, Data. So here, I'm going to go ahead and close out my other data set. So I'm going to close out the NES data set. And I am not going to save changes. So under my world data set, let's go over here. So it's asking us to analyze descriptives on trade percent GDP. So we're going to go over to analyze descriptives, frequencies. This measure of trade is one of the most important, and it is trade as a percent of GDP. So we're going to go under trade percent GDP. So trade percent GDP, I'm going to look at my statistics, mean, median, and mode.
Your spot's ready for you.
Oh, thank you, sweetie. And then we're going to go into charts. I'm going to go ahead and run a histogram just because I like to. And here I'm looking at, I've got international trade as a percent of GDP. The mean is 86, the median is 76, so that's a big difference. And then the mode is 21. Yikes, that's a very big difference. But it also tells me that multiple modes exist. So I go down here, it's a ton of data. It's really hard to say something about, but here's my histogram for this data set. So when I look at how it's skewed, it's very clearly skewed, right? And then we have all of this data down here, but there are multiple modes. And actually, I'm only seeing one mode here, so I'm not sure where the other modes are, but the descriptive box was pretty clear that there are multiple modes. So we'll come on over here. There could be multiple modes within this box. So we'll come on over here. It tells you the mean, 86. Let me go back up to my box. Mean, 86, standard deviation, 51. That's pretty broad, right? So centering or mean centering transforms the values, in our case, the percentages that range from 20 to 419. And that's probably, I'm going to guess that's Singapore. I could be off, but Singapore is a state that has hundreds of percent of trade to GDP because it's a trading state. So you can have well over 100, meaning that the value of trade that you conduct in a given year is higher than your overall GDP because you have things going in and out of a country. That's how trade can be higher because your volume of trade may be significantly higher than your GDP. But the GDP is a value that includes trade, so it kind of captures the benefit that you're getting from trade, if that makes sense. So that's the difference between valuing trade separately as opposed to a percent of GDP. So valuing it as a percent of GDP tells you how reliant a country is on trade. So the countries that have a couple 100% very heavily rely on trade for the health of their economy. So here we're going to mean center, and we're going to look at the variables, or rather in this case, the states. States is another word for countries. So we're going to look at which countries are above and below the mean. So we're going to go to transform compute. So when we're computing a new variable, we are doing something mathematical to the variable. So we're moving from creating different categories to actually doing something mathematical. So target variable And let me actually just scroll down to the figures and walk through. So figure 314 shows you exactly how to walk through this. So we want to find trade percent. You can just start typing it in, but I never remember the full name of my variable, so I'm going to just do that. Oops. That's not going to work. So trade percent centered. And then now I want to move my variable over. And here you need to know the mean. So we already know it, but here's where you'd want to jot down the mean, because you're artificially making up the numeric expression. So you're calculating the new target variable is trade percent centered, and I'm creating this by multiplying, subtracting the mean from trade percent GDP. So I'm going to actually type in, and then let me see what else I need to do. We're going to type and label, and we're going to put in, let me see what it has for type and label. So it's asking us to, actually it's not really giving us a type and label. So I'm just going to make up one. So I'm going to do mean centered trade percent GDP, because it's descriptive. It tells me what it is. So here I've got, I'm going to hit OK, and I think I've got everything. All right. So to check, again, I'm going to look at analyze descriptive frequencies. And I'm going to find my variable. So trade percent centered is right here. And then I'm going to follow along with figure 315. And click OK. So, okay, I've got, still looks the same, right? But you can see down here, the 0 is here. So I've got half of my countries on the left, half of my countries on the right. So it was successful because I can see that the values are now either above or below the mean. So to standardize this, we're going to do this. We're going to do analyze descriptives, save standardized values as variables. I'm going to come down here, find trade percent centered. Oops, I mean trade percent GDP. And I'm going to click OK. What this does is create a new variable. So let me go over to the data editor to show you. I could go over to the variable view or data view. So now, again, as described in the book over here, you have a new variable labeled Z. So again, we standardized the variable. So I created a mean-centered variable, and then I standardized it. So now I have both. I have a trade percent centered and a trade percent GDP with a Z in the front that is standardized. And then I'll show you what the standardized data look like. So the new standardized data Oops, and actually I think I did the same one. So let me do that again. I did. So let me get rid of that. So I want to do my standardized. So starts with Z, so Z trade, standardized. So on your Z score, it looks the same, but you can notice the values are now quite different, right? And when you go, you know you did it right. I actually have to click my mean again. You know you did it right when the mean is 0 and the standard deviation is 1. So I can see here, mean 0, standard deviation is not selected. So I need to go back into frequency, statistics, and click my standard deviation. And then hit OK. So now I've got the same data in my output, but I have standard deviation reported. And I did it correctly. So I both centered my variable for trade percent GDP and created a standardized variable. Standardized uses standard deviation. So why do you do this? Now, a country that has a standardized value equal to 1 has a trade percent value 1 standard deviation higher than the mean. It basically gives you a way to see the effect of variation in the variable. All right, so we'll move on to using compute to create an additive index. So we're going to go ahead and stick with, it looks like, GSS. So we're going to use the GSS data set and not stick with the current one. So we're going to create an additive index based on support for abortion access. So here we're looking at one concept or one thing, support for abortion access, but there's 7 different variables that we can use to figure out whether somebody supports abortion access. So I'm going to go ahead and open my GSS data set. But most importantly, I'm going to go down to this table. So we are looking at the variable on the left in the GSS data set. Let me go ahead and open it. File, open, data. In order for you to create this table, you actually have to go through and know how each of these are coded. So we need to create 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 new variables and then collapse them into an additive index. So if you notice, why do we need to recode this? Because this is 1 yes, 2 no, and we have to move it into a 1 yes, 0 no. So again, you're going to write down this table and you're going to have to create 7 new variables. So we're going to use the same process that we did above with transform, recode into different variable. And this is going to take a minute. So let's get right through. You can see, mine actually is already there, but we'll go through ab defect and then we've got ab defect R. You probably have this in your data set as well. So let's just check to make sure. We're going to go into Analyze Descriptives Frequencies, and I'm going to look at all of these variables to see. So I'm basically looking to make sure that all the new health, or all the new variables here with 1, 0 are in here as they should be. I'm missing. Oh, nope, there they are. All right, so we can go under our statistics. I'm just going to click standard deviation and then OK. I'm not going to run a chart, but I'm just going to make sure that, OK, here on my statistics, it says that this is a binary coding of A, B, A, N, Y, ab defect, ab health, ab no more, ab poor, ab rape, ab signal. So thank you to the person who redid all of these 7 variables. So now you're going to ask SPSS to compute a new variable, which you name abortion, and you sum the values of all of these. So you're going to go under transform, compute, and our target variable is going to be abortion N7. And I actually am going to add all of them together. So I'm adding, they happen to be all at the top alphabetically, but you're basically adding all of these variables together. So I'm adding A or AB any, AB defect, AB health, and I'm using my recoded variable. That's really important. The recoded variable has to be here. AB poor, AB rape, AB signal. Whoops. And you can see if you make an error, you have to go back. AB no more, so AB poor plus AB rape plus AB signal. Okay, so here I want to count up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I've got all 7 variables here, and I want to make sure. So I'm going to go down to figure 316 to make sure we did this. So type label, we're going to click here, and we're going to type abortion access index. So we're creating this new index. And then we are done. So this should look like figure 316. We go ahead and hit OK, and you can tell you did it down here. But you want to run a bar chart to make sure you did it correctly. So analyze descriptive frequencies. So I have all these other variables here that I need to get rid of, and I want to use my new variable. Oh, and it's not at the end. It is here, abortion N7. Under my statistics, I'm going to leave everything as is, and I'm going to make sure I have bar charts. And I'm going to put frequency or percentages under bar chart. So here, my abortion access index lines up with figure 317 in the book, and that's it. So again, in this case, we're creating a new index for abortion because one of these variables up here, whether or not, in this case, a married woman wants no more children. Well, and that should be, to be clear, the question is whether they think a woman should be permitted to have an abortion under these circumstances. So if someone answers yes under married woman wants more children, but no under mother not married, their index of support for abortion access is going to be less than somebody who answers yes for all of them. So the way that this works, you can actually see right here on the bar chart. So we have actually a lot of support for 7. So that means that 7 under this new abortion access index means 7 yeses. So that means a yes for a woman should be permitted to have an abortion in all 7 of these circumstances. So somebody who answers a 3, it looks like 7's the modal category, but 3 is the next highest in terms of frequency. So that would mean that according to this scale, that people are willing to support some circumstances for access. So their overall support for abortion access is less than somebody who answers yes to all of them. So this is helpful to understand the support for overall abortion access compared with just looking at one of these circumstances. So that sums up for chapter 3. And we walked through the last 2 things, and I will stop here and post this, and good luck on the homework for chapter 3.